The room was very quiet. That's what I remember most. Not the oak table, not the framed certificates on the wall, not my sister Diana sitting across from me in that black blazer she wore like armor. Just the quiet. Mr. Pruitt, our mother's attorney, had been reading for about 15 minutes. Standard stuff. The house, the savings account, the car. And then he got to my name. He said it so normally, like it was nothing. To my daughter, Claire, I leave the sum of $1 to be used at her discretion. $1. I sat very still. Diana's shoulders relaxed. I saw it happen, that tiny release, like she'd been holding her breath for weeks and she could finally let it go. My brother Ryan stared at the table, and I just sat there. But here's what none of them knew. My mother had been planning that moment for a very long time, and the dollar was not the point. Let me back up. My name is Claire. I'm the middle kid. I grew up in a small house in Ohio with my older sister Diana and my younger brother Ryan. 3 kids, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom we all shared and complained about. Diana is the oldest. She was always polished, even as a kid. She had a way of walking into a room and immediately figuring out who mattered and who didn't. She moved to Connecticut for college and kind of never really came back, not fully. Ryan is the youngest. He's a good person, I want to say that, but he's the kind of person who doesn't like conflict, which means whenever Diana and I disagreed about something, he quietly moved to Diana's side, not because he agreed with her, just because she was louder. And then there's me. I stayed close to home. I work in accounts payable for a construction company. I live about 40 minutes from where we grew up. Nothing glamorous, but it was close to Mom. Mom's name was Helen. She was a retired school teacher. She made lemon pound cake from scratch every Easter. She kept a little notepad by the phone, even though she'd had the same cell phone number for 8 years. She said things like, "Slow down, the world will wait," and somehow she made you believe it. I loved her a lot. We all did, but I think I showed up differently. Mom got sick when she was 71. It started small. She forgot a word here and there, left a pot on the stove a little too long. We told ourselves it was normal, aging, nothing serious. Then it got harder to pretend. Her doctor used the word progression. He gave us timelines. He was kind about it, which somehow made it worse. Diana flew in from Connecticut the first week after the diagnosis. She cried a lot. She talked about getting a care facility lined up, about options, about what would be best for Mom. She stayed for 6 days. Then she had to get back to her life. Ryan called every Sunday, 7 o'clock, like clockwork. They'd talk for 20 minutes. He'd say he was going to visit soon. He meant it, I think. And then there was me. I took Mom to her appointments on Tuesdays. I refilled her prescriptions. I brought groceries on Thursdays and stayed for dinner. I drove her to church on Sunday mornings and sat next to her in the 3rd pew from the front, which was her pew, had been for 30 years. I didn't do it because I wanted credit. I want to be clear about that. I did it because she was my mother and she needed someone there. It was that simple. About a month before she died, she took my hand. We were sitting at her kitchen table. She looked at me and said, "Don't leave before Carl finishes talking." I didn't know what that meant. Carl Pruitt was her attorney. I'd only met him once at a dinner years ago. I said, "Okay, Mom." She patted my hand and changed the subject. She died on a Tuesday morning. It was just the 2 of us. The room was very quiet, just like she would have wanted. 3 weeks after the funeral, we met at Carl Pruitt's office. Diana was dressed like she had somewhere to be afterward. Silk blouse, pearl earrings, heels on a Tuesday. She smelled like expensive perfume, and she sat down before anyone else even touched their chair. Ryan wore a navy blazer. He looked tired. He gave me a small nod when I walked in. I nodded back. Mr. Pruitt came in at exactly 10 o'clock. He was a tall man, maybe mid-60s, calm the way people get when they've done the same hard thing enough times. He shook our hands. He sat down. He opened a folder. He started reading. The house, Mom's house, the one she'd lived in for 34 years, went to Diana, along with the majority of her savings account. The car and a lump sum went to Ryan. I kept my face neutral. I told myself it was fine, that Mom knew what she was doing. And then he said my name. To my daughter Claire, I leave the sum of $1 to be used at her discretion. There was a pause, just a second. And then Diana breathed out that small, satisfied breath. She didn't smile, she was too smart for that, but her whole body changed. She sat up a little straighter, like something had been confirmed. Ryan didn't look at me. I didn't cry. I didn't move. I just sat with it. $1. There was a part of me that was embarrassed, I won't pretend there wasn't, to be handed $1 in a room full of attorneys and family. It felt like a public thing, like a verdict. But there was another part of me, a quieter part, and that part kept thinking about what Mom had said at the kitchen table. Don't leave before Carl finishes talking. Diana and Ryan were already gathering their things. There were handshakes, there was some paperwork about next steps. Diana asked Mr. Pruitt something about the timeline for the house transfer. He answered her patiently. I stood up, I shook Mr. Pruitt's hand, I thanked him, I walked out. I sat in my car in the parking garage for a while. I wasn't crying, I was just sitting. And then Mom's voice came back to me, clear as anything. Don't leave before Carl finishes talking. But the meeting was over. We'd left. Carl had finished talking. Or had he? My mother was a precise woman. She chose every word carefully. She did not say things by accident. If she told me not to leave before Carl finished talking, it wasn't a passing thought. It was an instruction. She meant for me to hear something. I picked up my phone. I called Mr. Pruitt's office. His receptionist answered on the second ring. I told her my name. I said I'd just been at the reading. I said I thought maybe there was something we hadn't gotten to. She put me on hold for less than a minute. Mr. Pruitt came on the line. His voice was calm. He said, Miss Claire, I was actually expecting your call. Could you come back in? I drove back. When I walked into the conference room, Mr. Pruitt was alone. Diana and Ryan were gone. He gestured to the chair across from him, and he opened the same folder. But this time, he reached into a separate compartment I hadn't noticed before, and he pulled out an envelope. It was regular-sized, white, sealed, and on the front, in my mother's handwriting, the loopy, familiar cursive she'd had since her teaching days, it said, "For Claire, after." I stared at it. Mr. Pruitt said, Your mother asked me to hold this separately. She asked that I give it to you privately after the reading concluded if you reached out. She said, and I'm quoting her now, Claire will call. She pays attention. I had to press my lips together for a second. He slid the envelope across the table. I picked it up. It was heavier than it looked. Should I open it here? I asked. He said, That's entirely up to you. I put it in my bag. I thanked him. I drove home. I needed to be alone with whatever my mother had left me. I sat at my kitchen table that night with a cup of tea I didn't drink. The envelope was in front of me. I'd called my friend Bethany on the drive home, told her everything. She said, Claire, open it tonight. Don't overthink it. I told her I would. I sat with it for another hour first. Then I broke the seal. Inside was a letter. Handwritten. 2 pages, front and back, in Mom's familiar cursive. And clipped behind the letter was a legal document. Several pages, stapled. Carl Pruitt's firm name at the top. I read the letter first. Mom started with, If you're reading this, Carl did his job, and so did you. She said she wanted to explain the $1. She knew how it would look. She knew it would sting. She said she was sorry for that part, the sting, but not for the plan, because the plan, she said, was the most important thing she'd done in a long time. She wrote, "Diana has always needed to win. You know that better than anyone. If I left you anything significant in that room, she would have challenged it. She would have found a way to make it a fight, and I was not going to let her spend the next 3 years of your life turning your grief into a courtroom." So she gave Diana what Diana needed to see: the house, the savings, the car, the public reading with the attorney and the handshakes, Diana's victory. And then she built something else, quietly, years before she got sick. I put the letter down and I picked up the legal document. It was a trust, a separate trust, established almost 4 years ago with my name on it. The house Mom owned in a neighboring county, a small rental property she'd bought with money she'd saved over decades, was already in my name, had been for 3 years. A life insurance policy taken out when I was 32 named me as sole beneficiary. A small investment account, steady and quiet in a separate institution entirely. And at the bottom of the letter, in her clearest handwriting, Mom had written, "I didn't give you less, Claire. I made sure they couldn't touch what I gave you." I had to set the paper down. I sat at that kitchen table and I cried, hard, the kind of crying that comes up from somewhere deep and doesn't apologize for itself. Not because I was sad, because I finally understood. 2 days later, Diana called. She'd found out about the trust. I don't know how. Maybe she'd talked to someone at Mr. Pruitt's office. Maybe she'd done some digging of her own. It doesn't really matter. What matters is how she sounded on the phone. She was furious. She said I had manipulated Mom. She said I had spent all those years at the house not out of love but out of strategy. She said I had played a long game and that she should have seen it coming. I let her talk. I've known Diana my whole life. When she's angry, you don't interrupt. You wait. When she stopped, I said, "Mom made her choices. I'm going to honor them." Diana said she was going to speak to an attorney. I said, "That's your right." She hung up. Ryan texted me that evening. He said, "Did you know about the trust?" I said, "Not until I opened the envelope." He went quiet for a while. Then he said, "I believe you." That meant more than I expected it to. He never took sides publicly. He never called Diana out, but he believed me. And for Ryan, that was a lot. I put the phone down. I made myself dinner. I went to bed. I didn't sleep great, but I got up the next morning anyway. Diana did retain an attorney. Her argument was undue influence. She claimed that I had been in Mom's home so frequently during her illness that I had pressured her, consciously or not, into changing her financial plans in my favor. When Mr. Pruitt told me about it, I felt a cold kind of anger. Not hot, cold, the kind that sits in your chest and doesn't move. He was calm. He said, "Claire, your mother established this trust almost 4 years ago, before any diagnosis, before any decline. The documentation is thorough, and the timeline is unambiguous." He said your mother was deliberate. She anticipated this. I pulled together everything I had anyway, not because I was scared, because I wanted it on record. Every appointment, every grocery run, every Tuesday in that waiting room. I had years of receipts and calendar notes that told a simple story. I showed up because she needed someone there. That was all. The challenge went nowhere. Diana's attorney sent one letter. Mr. Pruitt responded. There was no response after that. It was over quietly, the way most things are when the truth is on your side. I went to visit Mom's grave about a month after everything settled. It was a cold morning, November, the kind of gray sky that goes on forever. I stood there for a while. I didn't say a lot. I just stood. I thought about something she used to say when I was a kid. She'd say it whenever Diana got loud about something being unfair, or whenever Ryan got frustrated that things weren't going his way. She'd say, "Let the loud ones make noise, the quiet ones build." I never really understood that when I was young. I thought she was just being patient, being a teacher. But standing there in that cold November grass, I understood it completely. Mom had watched Diana her whole life. She knew exactly what Diana would do with a public will. She knew the performance that would follow, the satisfaction, the entitlement, the threat of a fight if anything seemed unfair to her. So Mom let Diana have the performance. She gave Diana the audience she needed. And then, in the quiet, in the documents filed years before any of us were sitting in that office, Mom had already done the real work. The dollar wasn't an insult. It was a message. It said, "The thing I'm giving you is somewhere they can't see it. The rental property in the neighboring county is mine now. I have a tenant, good family. They pay on time and they take care of the place. It covers my expenses with a little left over every month." The life insurance paid out within 60 days of filing the claim. I used most of it to pay off my mortgage. The rest I put into savings. I donated a portion, not a large amount, but meaningful to me, to the elementary school where Mom taught for 19 years. It's a small scholarship fund. Her name is on it. Kids from low-income families can apply every spring. That part was not in the will. That was just mine to decide. Diana and Ryan divided the main house. It sold in 5 weeks. They split it down the middle. As far as I know, they both moved on with their lives. Diana texted me on my birthday. Just 3 words. "Happy birthday, Claire." I stared at it for a minute. Then I typed back, "Thank you." And I meant it. Not because things were good between us, but because I was done waiting for her to understand something she probably never will. That text was enough. I let it be enough. I used to think that love was supposed to be visible, announced, that if someone really cared about you, you'd know it because they'd say it in front of other people, in writing, in a room full of witnesses. My mother taught me something different. Sometimes love is a trust document filed on a Tuesday afternoon. Sometimes it's a name added to a deed years before anyone thinks to ask. Sometimes it's a woman sitting across from her daughter at a kitchen table and saying 4 quiet words, "Don't leave before he's finished," and trusting that her daughter will pay attention. The dollar was never the point. The page underneath it was the point, and Mom knew I'd find it. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever been the one who showed up quietly and wondered if it mattered, I want you to know it mattered. It always does. I put out a new story every week. If you want to be here for the next one, hit subscribe. It means a lot more than you think. And I'd love to know, have you ever been underestimated by your own family? Leave it in the comments. I read every single one. Take care of yourselves.